You think you are free, but your entire life is governed by a 14th century invention that severed our connection with the universe. We replaced the natural rhythm of the sun with the cold and rigid heartbeat of the escapement mechanism. Discover how the mechanical clock turned humanity into gears of a global machine. Before the Invisible Revolution, time was a chaotic, organic flow that belonged to no one. Then a single invention synchronized the planet, binding global labor and commerce to a single ticking pulse. We uncover how the clock replaced celestial cycles and permanently imprisoned human autonomy in its own gears. What if I told you the greatest tool of human control is not the internet, but the clock on the wall? This is the story of how mechanical precision forcibly synchronized a global society, how it turned a wild world into a predictable, ticking engine. Learn how we became slaves to the gears. The first civilizations did not measure time. They felt it. A farmer who woke with the sunrise walked to his field and returned when he saw the shadows growing long. Dinner began with sunset. Sleep came with darkness. There was no clock. There were no minutes. There were no calendar pages. Only the great cycle of the sky existed. Day and night, full moon and crescent, planting and harvest, rain and drought. In Egypt, the annual flooding of the Nile was life's clock. When the flood began, the land was covered with water, and farmers waited. When the water receded, planting began. When harvest season came, the grain was collected. No minutes or hours were needed for any stage of this cycle. Whenever the river flooded, that was the time. But people did notice something. Shadows moved. A stick planted in the ground cast a shadow that fell long and westward in the morning. Toward midday, it shortened. In the afternoon, it extended eastward. This simple observation was the first step in humanity's history of measuring time. The Sumerians around 3500 BC named this stick the gnomon. Lines were carved around stone gnomons placed in temple courtyards. The section of day was understood by which line the shadow fell on. The Egyptians scaled this to enormous proportions. 20-meter-tall granite obelisks erected before the temples of Karnak and Luxor were in fact giant sundials. The obelisk's shadow fell on the stone courtyard floor, and carved lines indicated the day's divisions. Around 1500 BC, Egyptians developed the L-shaped portable sundial. Small enough to fit in an official's belt pouch, pointed east in the morning and turned west in the afternoon. But the sundial had major problems. It did not work at night. It did not work on cloudy days. The concept of 1 hour lasted 75 minutes in summer and 45 in winter, because the daylight portion was divided into 12 parts that changed the season. Every city's sundial showed a different time. When it was noon in Rome, it was not noon in Athens. Egyptians developed the water clock for nighttime measurement. The clepsydra dripped water from a conical stone vessel through a small hole at the bottom. Lines on the inner wall showed time passing as the water level dropped, but the water clock was unreliable too. The flow rate changed with temperature, vessel contamination, and fullness level. In China, time was measured by scent. Spiral incense sticks burned at a fixed rate, and when different scents were reached, it was understood that time had moved to a new segment. The hourglass was born in the world of seafaring, and sailors measured watch periods by turning the glass. All these devices, the gnomon, the obelisk, the water clock, incense, hourglass, candle clock, demonstrated the same thing. Humanity wanted to measure time, but none was precise. None could offer a system that worked identically day and night, regardless of season, in every location. What was missing was precision, and the need for precision would give birth to a mechanism that would change everything. At the end of the 13th century, a problem existed in Europe's monasteries. Monks were required to pray 7 times daily at specific hours. Midnight matins, dawn lauds, morning prime, midday sext, afternoon none, evening vespers, and bedtime compline. Each of these 7 canonical hours was precisely fixed, but the sundial was useless, and the water clock was unreliable. An abbot's greatest challenge was starting prayer at the correct time. The mechanical clock was born from this need. Its principle was simple but ingenious. A stone weight attached to a rope pulled downward by gravity. This falling energy turned a gear wheel. But if the gear wheel was released freely, the weight would drop rapidly, and the energy would be wasted. The escapement mechanism prevented this. A verge, a vertical iron rod, with 2 iron pallets, alternately arrested and released the escape port's teeth. Each catch and release produced 1 tick-tock. This tick-tock was history's first artificial heartbeat. The first mechanical clocks were built to ring monastery bells automatically. A weight descended, and the gear train turned, and at a specific interval, a hammer struck the bell. Monks no longer needed someone to stay awake waiting. The machine rang the bell on time, but the impact of this invention went far beyond the monastery. In the 14th century, great tower clocks took over European cities. In 1344, Padua; in 1354, Strasbourg; in 1386, Salisbury; and in 1410, Prague built enormous tower clocks. Prague's horloge still operates today, a machine that has been ticking for 6 centuries. These tower clocks fundamentally transformed society. For the first time, an entire city shared the same time reference. Market hour, work hour, closing hour, curfew hour, all were defined by the tower clock's bells. Craft guilds set meeting times by the tower clock. Courts determined hearing times. City gates opened and closed at fixed hours. For the first time, time became a social contract. Time was no longer personal. It was public. Everyone had to look at the same clock. Those who did not follow the clock were left outside. The market closed, the city gate shut, the prayer began without them. These early clocks were still very crude. They drifted 15 to 30 minutes per day. There was no minute hand, only an hour hand. Some tower clocks had no hands at all, only bells striking each hour. Time was still measured approximately, but what mattered was not precision. What mattered was the principle. Time was now bound to gears, not to the sky. Machine had replaced nature. Iron had replaced the sun. And this iron never stopped. What began in the monastery spread to cities, spread to nations, and would eventually encompass the entire planet. In 1656, Dutch mathematician Christian Huygens invented the pendulum clock. This discovery was a revolution in the history of clockmaking. The physical property of the pendulum, a pendulum of fixed length always swings in the same period, added a regular and reliable rhythm source to the escapement mechanism. The result was dramatic. The escapement clock that drifted 15 minutes per day now drifted only 15 seconds per day. Precision increased 100-fold. The minute hand became meaningful for the first time. The concept of the second became measurable. This precision revolution could have remained a technological advancement on its own. But when combined with the Industrial Revolution beginning in the late 18th century, it triggered one of the greatest social transformations in human history. The factory system turned time into a weapon. In the previous world, a farmer worked in a task-oriented way, staying in the field until the harvest was done and finishing when the task was complete. A craftsman worked until the order was complete. The measure was not time itself, but the completion of work. The factory system changed this fundamentally. The factory gate opened at a specific hour. The worker had to be there at exactly that time. The late worker's wages were docked. Start time, break time, and end time were determined to the minute. For the first time, human labor became a commodity, sellable by the hour. Not the amount of cloth a weaver wove, but the number of hours worked became the unit of payment. Time recording ledgers were kept at factory gates. Every worker's arrival and departure time was written down. These ledgers were tools of discipline that forcibly synchronized the worker's body with the factory's rhythm. The owner became the possessor of the worker's time, buying, measuring, and controlling it. Children were employed. In England's textile mills, 6-year-old children would work 14 hours a day. Children who fell into machines from exhaustion died. The clock was their prison. When work started and ended depended not on the child's body, but on the clock on the wall. There were moments of worker resistance. In some factories, workers suspected the owner of tampering with the clock, claiming it was slowed down to extend work hours. Clock disputes broke out. Time itself became a field of struggle. When human labor became measurable, it became sellable. When it became sellable, it became exploitable. When it became exploitable, it became polarized. Owner and worker, time seller and time buyer. The clock was the first link in this chain. The clock on the factory wall did not merely show time. It showed who owned humans. And this system
Look at the time.
Machines ran
It's 6:45.
The ship
The master's
system.
clock is slow
The
again.
night shift shattered the
30
human body's
minutes.
natural rhythm. The circadian rhythm. Instead of sleeping at sunset, people were forced to work at the factory's demand. The body now obeyed the clock. The Great Synchronization. In the 1840s, the railway connected England. Rails linked cities. Distances shrank. Trade accelerated. But an unexpected problem emerged. Time. Every city had its own local solar time. Bristol was 10 minutes behind. Exeter was 14 minutes behind. Plymouth was 2 minutes. When a train departed London at 8 o'clock and arrived in Bristol, it was 7:50 by Bristol time. This was not merely confusing, it was deadly. Two trains on the same line moved with different understandings of now. One ran on Bristol time, the other on London time. Collisions occurred. Train timetables became meaningless. Passengers missed connecting trains. The system was on the verge of collapse. In 1847, British Railways made a radical decision. Adopting Greenwich Mean Time, GMT, as the standard time for the entire railway network. For the first time, a country abandoned local solar time and adopted a single artificial time standard. This decision was initially met with resistance. Some cities were attached to their local times. Bristol Cathedral's clock carried 2-hour hands for years, one showing local Bristol time, the other Greenwich Mean Time. But the railway's practical need prevailed. Telegraph lines made this synchronization possible. Time signals were transmitted from one city to another over electrical cable. Time pulses sent from the Greenwich Observatory spread across all of England via the telegraph network. Time was no longer physically transported. It traveled by electricity. Synchronization at the speed of light. In 1884, the International Meridian from Washington divided the entire planet into 24 time zones. Greenwich was designated the prime meridian. France objected, preferring the Paris meridian. But eventually Greenwich was accepted. The whole world was connected to the same system. The impact of this synchronization was enormous. International trade, shipping, telegraph communication, all began standard. Stock markets synchronized. The New York and London exchanges could trade on the same time reference. Factories synchronized. Transcontinental supply chains were established. Armies synchronized. Military operations were coordinated to the minute. The clock was no longer a device. It was infrastructure. Like an electrical grid, like a water network, a time grid. Invisible, but everywhere. And those who did not connect to this grid were left outside. Unsynchronized societies were declared backward. Time was no longer merely a physical measurement. It was a political weapon. The digital ghost in the machine. In 1955, at England's National Physical Laboratory, the first atomic clock began operating. The natural vibration frequency of the cesium, 133 atoms, 9,192,631,770 vibrations per second, became the new reference for time. Its precision is unparalleled in human history. 1 second of drift in 300 years. Quantum physics replaced mechanical gears. Time was now measured not by the turning of iron teeth, but by the vibrations of atoms. This level of precision made an entirely new world possible. The GPS navigation system depends on atomic clocks. Each of the 31 GPS satellites orbiting 20,200 kilometers above Earth carries 4 atomic clocks. When your phone receives signals from these satellites, it measures timing differences to determine your position to 30 centimeters of accuracy. Without this system navigation, delivery logistics, emergency services, precision agriculture, military operations, all would collapse. The map on your phone is the child of the atomic clock. Financial markets operate in nanoseconds. High-frequency trading algorithms buy and sell a stock in 0.0000001 seconds. On Wall Street, the physical proximity of servers to the exchange building provides milliseconds of time advantage. Companies pay millions of dollars for this advantage. A millisecond of delay means millions in losses. Time is no longer money. Money itself is time. Internet infrastructure, data centers, blockchain, 5G networks, autonomous vehicles, drone delivery systems, all depend on atomic clocks synchronized to the microsecond level. If the modern world lost the rigid rhythm of the atomic clock, it could collapse within a day. But as humanity, we are paying a price. Time poverty has become the disease of the 21st century. The state of constant synchronization, notifications, calendars, deadlines, meetings, schedules, has separated humans from their organic rhythm. Burnout has become a global epidemic. Sleep disorders are at pandemic levels. Screen-bound time has fragmented daily sleep duration. People say, "I have no time," but in reality, none of the time they have belongs to them. Every minute is tied to a calendar, a schedule, an algorithm. 5,000 years ago, a farmer would look at the sun and decide when to stop. Today, an algorithm tells you when to sleep. The screen time warning on your phone, your sleep quality score, your step counter, all measure, report, and manage your time. The clock is no longer on the wall. It is in your pocket, on your wrist. It never leaves you. The question is this: can humanity free itself from the gears it created, or will it spin forever inside the machine? We do not know the answer, but we do know one thing. The TICK-TOCK that began in a 14th century monastery continues today at the atomic level, and it has never stopped.